Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the History of Rock podcast. His name is Brandon. He's the DJ.
His name is Shim. He's the rock star. Class is in session. And this class, we technically have to go back one because, actually two, because we had the Taylor Hawkins dedication episode. But we also didn't do the Soundgarden 3 songs that are going to make it on the playlist. So if you want to find this playlist, just head over to Spotify. You can find me at The Real Brandalorian. And there's one there that's called The History of Rock Grunge. And we never picked the 3 songs from Soundgarden. So I'm interested to know which 3 songs you are going with.
It's easy. I've always said I'm a song guy. Most of the people who are listening who know me and my taste are probably going to know the ones, right? Obviously, you got Rusty Cage and Jesus Christ Pose.
Okay.
Right? And the reason is because of the attitude in those songs, man. They just get you going. But Outshined was the first song that I remember hearing after Spoon Man. Spoon Man was the first song that I heard, and then I went back and I found Outshined, and Outshined is just a great fucking jam. So those are my 3.
Okay, so Rusty Cage is a given, because I even mentioned in those episodes, this album has one of my favorite Soundgarden songs. It's Rusty Cage. That's the one that when 100%. I finally got to see them live like 7-8 years ago, I was like, if they don't play Rusty Cage, like I'm going to throw something.
So, wait, that's Jesus Christ Pose. Okay, so let's get to keep going. And I just realized one thing that I want to go back to when you're done.
I'm perfectly good with Outshined and Jesus Christ Pose, but there's a song that I really want on this playlist. So I'm wondering if you're willing to give up one of those 2 for Searching with My Good Eye Closed.
Yeah, really? I mean, that's great, but like, why? But why? It's not better.
I don't know. That song, that one sticks with me when I listen to the whole album, front to back. That's the one that I catch myself singing later on in the day.
So which one would you take out? Aha. Fuck yeah. Fuck you. Fucking sit in it. Deal with it.
See, that's, I don't know, because Outshined and Jesus Christ Pose. Which one would you take out?
I wouldn't take out any of them. You fucking started this. Go for it.
I know.
How about some accountability, Brandon?
Okay, so for me, the 3 that I was going to pick were going to be Rusty Cage, Outshined, and Searching with My Good Eye Closed.
Really?
I was okay.
And
trust me, it's difficult, but I was willing to not go with Jesus Christ Pose.
Nah, Jesus Christ Pose has got to be in there.
Are you okay? Look, you can veto me out on this one, but I'm going to get a veto in the future. So we can go with Rusty Cage, Outshined, and Jesus Christ Pose.
Yeah, I think we need to. You can have a veto. Let's look forward to when you're going to veto me.
All right, there it is.
Has anyone ever put together? This is a sidebar, okay? Have you ever noticed? And was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, was that made after Jesus Christ Pose?
God, I don't know. I'm looking that up though.
Because if you think about it, what is the sound when Bill and Ted go excellent?
That's an interesting point right there. It says here.
I just fucking thought of it then because I was about to say Rusty Cage and then I went, no, that riff is from Jesus Christ Pose. So it's not copywritten, but it's every time that you go and listen to Jesus Christ Pose, you're going to hear Bill and Ted.
Yeah. No, Bill and Ted came out long before before Bad Motorfinger did. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure came out in '89.
So then maybe they ripped it. Someone ripped someone. So Soundgarden ripped off Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I'm saying it now. It's on the record.
All right. So those are the 3 songs that we're putting into the playlist. Again, you can find it over on Spotify because we didn't do it originally with Soundgarden. We're going to go Rusty Cage, Outshined, and Jesus Christ Pose. Now, of course, here we go. We're moving on to today's album, and if you look right above me here, especially if you're watching on Spotify or on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple or Google, make your way over to Spotify and YouTube. You can see our pretty faces over there. Yeah, but we're talking about Nirvana's Nevermind today, and in a previous episode, we had discussed which albums spent the most time on the Billboard 200. I quizzed you. You assumed it was a pop album. It was actually Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. It spent 962 weeks on the charts.
Disgusting.
In that top 10 is Nirvana's Nevermind. It's 7th on the list, spending 566 total weeks on the charts. Now, overall, Nirvana is also one of the best-selling bands of all time. They have sold more than 75 million records worldwide.
And most of those were Nevermind.
Yes.
Like,
I mean, In
let's be
Utero
real.
obviously sold a lot.
In
and then
Utero, yeah,
people would
yeah,
go
but-
buy Bleach and,
Yeah.
but Nevermind
worked-
was like the album.
I can imagine that, like, after he died and the dust settled, people were still going and buying Nevermind for 10 years before record sales
Absolutely.
dipped. But they go to Nirvana, they go to that, and then they'd burn or copy fucking Bleach from someone else and be like, I like one of those songs, but it's just not as good as Nevermind.
Well, that got me thinking. We should do a comparison when it comes to streams. Now, these numbers come just from Spotify that I can find on Spotify. I don't have like secret knowledge or something. People at Spotify. You need to see if they can give us secret numbers. But anyway, I wanted to kind of do a comparison here, looking at Nirvana's "Smells Like Teen Spirit." Like, that is the song that vaulted them to complete and utter superstardom. I compared that to Pearl Jam's "Alive" on Spotify. So Pearl Jam's "Alive" has 366 million streams. That's a lot, right?
Right. That's a
Smells
lot,
Smells Like Teen Spirit has 4 times that at 1.2 billion.
That's significant.
That's
and
a
I think
big
that
chunk.
really. What's the name of the Pearl Jam fans again? The Pearl Jamians?
The Jammies.
The Jammies?
The
That's gonna
Jammies.
piss them off. Doesn't that gotta piss them? I wonder if there's a Jammy in the corner on the virtual metaverse somewhere being like, come on, guys, we can make it. Just another 600 million streams.
Just has Spotify on a loop, just playing the
Fucking
song
A.
over and over and over again. So here's what I want. So if you're new to the history of rock, Shim gets out his guitar every couple of times every episode, and he
trying to
starts to
think.
sing something. And I'm wondering if you could riff on something there with "Smells Like Teen Spirit" having 4 times as many streams as Pearl
I can
Jam's
imagine.
"Alive."
Come, listen to Alive. We're really behind. We don't know if we can make it there. We're not ashamed. We're just afraid that not as many people care.
Yeah, that's what's up. It's well done. It's well done. All right, we're going to move straight into this episode here. So obviously we're talking about Nirvana's Nevermind. It was released on September 24th, 1991. Your singles, "Smells Like Teen Spirit." That was the one out of the gate. It dropped 2 weeks before the album did. And then, of course, you had "Come As You Are," then "Lithium," and then "In Bloom" were all of the singles that came off of this album.
In Bloom was the song that did it for me. Everyone loves "Smells Like Teen Spirit." When I first got the record and heard "In Bloom," that was the one where that was my favorite song for the first. Everyone's got their favorite song as it kind of moves through life, but like I remember "In Bloom" blew my fucking hair off. It was awesome.
Well, the band at that time, it consisted of Kurt Cobain, obviously, lead guitar, lead vocals. Chris Novoselic, he was on bass and backing vocals, and he is a big, big dude. I was
he's
watching.
like
he's
yeah.
6'7".
Yeah, fuck. He's like a giant.
And I think I looked up, I think Kurt Cobain was maybe 5'9". So the two of them standing next to each other, that's a pretty big contrast. Yeah. And then, of course, by the time they were on with Nevermind, it's Dave Grohl on the drums and backing vocals as well. So we're going to go back to the beginning here a little bit. The band was formed in Aberdeen, Washington in 1987 by Kurt and Chris, and it had a variety of drummers before landing on Dave Grohl in 1990. He's had some interesting stories. As I was researching the episode for Taylor Hawkins, obviously I was going through a lot of things about Dave Grohl and hearing him answer questions about Nirvana. He told one story. I don't know how completely true this is, but he met some of the other drummers from, like the early drummers from Nirvana. He said one of them, I guess they were at a laundromat, and the dude hands Dave Grohl a quarter, and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to get in this dryer. Turn it on after I get in." So I don't know if that's completely true or not, but it was hilarious. And then he also mentioned that there was one of the drummers that he just didn't show up one day because he was hungover. So that's why he was not in Nirvana anymore.
Dude,
like, it's some pretty crazy stuff.
Well, it's not crazy when you think about where they came from and what they were doing. At the time, Nirvana was fucking nothing.
In retrospect.
Yeah, in retrospect, yeah. At the time, they were just another fucking band from another fucking town that was just making songs in their garage or wherever they were, grinding it out. And bands and these players, they bounce between a million different bands.
Yep.
So like, there's a lot of shitty players and shitty people that just have to slowly get weeded out. Dude, if I could, we had some drummer changes at the beginning of the Puppies. Like there was,
I'm dehydrated.
Yeah, I'm dehydrated. We went through luckily we only went through three or four drummer changes. And then we landed on the guy who was with us for the whole US section.
Yeah, and lucky for them, they've only gone through 2 lead singers too.
So moving back to where we're going back to Nevermind. They had released their first album, Bleach, under the Sub Pop label in 1989, which was also after Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Brandon.
Yeah, and Sub Pop, for anybody who's been listening to the history of rock, that was like the label in Seattle, and that's the one that's going to kind of have an underlying theme here. But we're going to get to more of that with Nirvana coming up, either this episode or the next episode. And Kurt and Chris, they actually met while attending Aberdeen High School, and they became friends because they would frequently attend the practice of the Melvins. Now, did you mention that the Melvins made it to Australia or not?
No, this is the funny thing. Nirvana was so big in Australia. The only reason that we knew the Melvins is because we knew the Melvins influenced Nirvana, because it was mentioned in interviews. And people would go and search out the Melvins, but the Melvins never made it on the radio. They never, or if they toured, no one really paid, or at least I didn't. I might have been too young. But no, it was always, it was this weird little thing of like, hey man, you like Nirvana? Yeah, cool. Soundgarden? Okay, cool. You're kind of hardcore. Okay, Pearl Jam. Well, okay, but like Green Day? Oh, get lost. Melvins? Okay, you're real. You're like a real fucking fan. You really love music. Like it was this badge of honor that if you really knew the Melvin songs and you listen to the records and you could hang, then you were fucking cool, man. But if you just like Smells Like Teen Spirit, you're a fucking poser. Aussies are fucked. We're fucked.
Well, I don't think that was even me growing up in the Northwest, I think there was at least some of that as well. I mean, you'd have the people who knew Nirvana because of Smells Like Teen Spirit, but you always knew the true hardcore fans were the people who knew who the Melvins were. Yeah. Like there was, I had one friend in high school, he was kind of the music guy at that time. And there was somebody who was listening to something on the radio, and they were like, who is this? And he immediately was like, oh, that's Smashing Pumpkins. Everybody was all oohed and awed, like, oh, how did he know that? Now looking back on it, I'm like, it's pretty goddamn obvious because you could tell Billy Corgan's voice from everybody else. But in that moment, when you're 15, 16 years old.
Yeah, I love what he stands for and his musical contribution to history, but every time he starts singing a song, I just hear Kermit.
Yeah, it ain't easy being green.
I just hear it. Dude, I mean, he's a genius, but that turned me off Smashing Pumpkins for the longest time. And we'll get to that when we get to the thing.
I was going to say, we'll do Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, and we'll do some Smashing Pumpkins, but we might need to do a whole episode on his influence in the music industry, because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, he's the lead singer of Smashing Pumpkins and he's had a couple of other projects. No, he was very heavily involved with a lot of things. He was very influential.
No, he's a genius. He's a straight up genius.
It's the haircut. It's the haircut.
It's the haircut, dude. Yeah.
Although if you go back far enough, there's videos of him with hair. So.
But yeah, well, I mean, that was Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, basically.
I think so.
He had hair.
We'll have to track. Ooh, we could track my hair too. Yeah.
That's why people are listening right now. That's what they pay for.
Hairstyles.
Pay for.
Yeah.
During the initial months of the band, they had a bunch of different names. I love this, including Skid Row.
Yeah.
Skid Row wasn't a thing yet.
I think they already were, but I don't. And these might not even have been true. That might have just been ideas they'd floated out there.
Right. Skid Row. Pen Cap Chew. Which I know exactly what I know. It's exactly. He's there. He's writing lyrics. He's coming up with ideas for band names, and he's chewing his pen, and he goes pen cap chew. And people would have thought it was some Japanese dish. And Ted, Ed, Fred. I mean, it's not. I wish I had the list of names. I used to carry it around in my back pocket when the band started. I had a piece of paper that was all crumpled, and I would write down any idea for names, and there were some fucking horrible names. They settled on Nirvana. Cobain explained, I wanted a name that was kind of beautiful or nice and pretty instead of mean, raunchy punk name like the Angry Samoans. And I really think that lends a lot to the sentiment and the reason why Kurt was as, Everyone who knew him said he was like a little fucking puppy dog. And then the songs, if you this every you may not realize this, but every Nirvana song can be broken down to a ballad because the songs are that well structured and simple. And to come from that type of place, he wasn't really a deeply angry guy. He might have been angsty because it was very angsty to be grunge.
Oh, that word.
Angst.
You
angst,
hear that word when doing the research for this, you hear that word all the time. Even if it's an interview back then, it's all teen angst. You know, we're all angsty, and it's like, oh man, like that's a word that has just it's burned a hole in my brain, and yeah. Continue.
So anyway, no, you're up.
Oh, I thought you were going to make another comment on it. No, you're done. That's it. That's it.
I'm finished.
Shim's done. He's checked out. Everybody.
How about you do your fucking job, Brandon?
All right. So anyway, in an interview at the Reading Festival in 1991. The interviewer asks the band about the name, and they kind of blow it off. And I've watched a lot of interviews with these guys, and Chris was generally the face of a lot of the interviews. I mean, they would try to target things towards Kurt. Even Dave Grohl would just barely pop in, but they were dicks. They were just that tough interview. They didn't want to answer. You could tell they did not give a fuck. They didn't want to be there. They would give these just asshole answers. And when you think about Dave Grohl now as being like the nicest guy in rock, go watch some of these older interviews where you almost have to give props to the person doing the interview because they're being put through the ringer by Nirvana. And that's what happened when this guy brings up, and when he brings, because it might have been that quote, but there was a bio that obviously gets sent out about the band. And Kurt mentions to the guy, look, he goes, I was really hungover, and I don't remember what I said. So you're asking me about something that I probably don't even remember. But as the interview kind of went on, Kurt finally, they're talking about the title Nirvana, and he says, it'll be a household word in no time. And it was. Like, everybody knows Nirvana now. So backtracking where we've talked about horrible band names, and we talk about how, like, Smashing Pumpkins or Foo Fighters or whatever the case may be, Nirvana's a pretty goddamn good band name.
I was thinking the same thing this morning. I was going over your show notes and I'm like, dude, I remember if I had come up, here's the thing. When I remember coming up with the idea for the band name Motley Crue before I knew, when I was like 14, right? And I would just think of band names and think of song ideas. And I remember I heard the term like, oh, they're a Motley Crue. It was like a colloquial phrase. And I'm like, boom. Oh, I found my band name. I looked it up. Shit.
But it's spelled differently.
Happened. Yeah. And I found so many, and Nirvana was another one. Like it didn't come, but I remember thinking, if I had God, I wish I had come up with the idea for the band name Nirvana. It is perfect, and it can apply. You could literally have had, like, if Destiny's Child had been named Nirvana, it would have fit so well.
Yeah.
Right. Like you could have named the Beatles Nirvana, and it would have worked as well. It could have worked on any band, and we're so lucky that it was this band, because otherwise Nirvana gave credibility to grunge because of the songs. The songs were that fucking good. Whereas with Soundgarden, not every song was a great song. They were just a fucking great band with a great sound and a vibe. But you could write off grunge if it was just them. And you could write off Pearl Jam because you're like, oh, well, he sings well, but he kind of, was before anyone else sang like that. So it was like, I can't understand you. Go back to your...
Slow.
Go back to Seattle. And so... But
no,
Nirvana
go back to
was...
San Diego for Vetter.
But for Nirvana was perfect because you couldn't necessarily understand everything, but you could not fucking get the songs out of your head.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it. So then when you look it up and you go, okay, so it was just a perfect stars aligning type of moment. And I don't think it was luck. I think Kurt knew exactly what he was doing, that he didn't want to be an angry angst grunge band. He wanted to have a big fucking sound and have amazing music that transcended or ultimately created genre. Is it me?
You're on there, buddy.
Yeah. So there we go. From Bleach to Nevermind, Cobain said that the band's music was changing. The early songs were really angry, but as time goes on, it gets poppier and poppier as I get happier and happier. The songs are now about conflicts and relationships, emotional things, and other emotional things with other human beings. So that's fair enough.
See, but the interesting thing is when I hear these quotes, and watching the interviews and the way that they would interview, I almost take every single quote from the band with a gigantic grain of salt. Because it's like,
they didn't give a fuck.
Yeah, were they like, is this a legitimate answer or is this one of their bullshit answers? You know what I mean?
I can speak to that. If he was talking about his music, I guarantee you, if you get asked about your songs, you answer honestly pretty much all the time. The reason, I mean, I'm going to make assumptions, but like I've been there, not there, but I get it. There comes a point where you resent your success when people don't pay attention to what got you there. So if you're Nirvana and you're the biggest fucking band in the world, and people are like, "Hey, grunge in Seattle, and what type of flannel are you wearing today?" And they're like, "Dude, fuck you, just fuck yourself."
I'm running out of flannels, by the way. I'm gonna have to go. It's getting close. Like you'll see this one in this weekend next week because we record these all at once. So
that's hashtag champagne problems right there. I'm running out of flannel. Yeah. Some kids are running out of food.
There's your song. There's your song. I'm running out of flannel.
I'm running out of flannel.
Come on, riff one. Let's do this.
Fucking. What was the thing here before? Oh yeah. Trying to think of. This was one of the first riffs I ever learned too. I haven't played it in 20 years, and I can still remember. I used to be so angry. I wrote my songs about the shit that bothered me. But now the only thing that upsets me lately is my flannel. I'm lacking flannel, lacking flannel, lacking flannel. See, they're not all going to be winners. I'm lacking flannel. I'm lacking flannel, that's not the melody. It's not even the riff anymore because I made up the chords and I fucked it up. Next.
You did just fine. You did just fine. All right, in September of 1990. So here's where the stories kind of start to get mixed up a little bit because I'm hearing and reading different versions of the stories basing on whatever basting like a turkey.
Up
We're basting it, mate.
Slap it around a bit.
Kind of wherever you're getting it from, but one version here is in September 1990. The band was looking for a drummer when Buzz Osborne, he's the lead singer and guitarist for the Melvins, introduced them to Grohl. Novoselic said of Grohl, "We knew in 2 minutes that he was the right drummer."
That's exactly how it works. You can tell immediately. The funny thing is, you can usually tell when someone's right, but you can always tell when someone's wrong. It's no different than when you start dating someone. You go out on a date with someone within the first 5 minutes and they start picking their teeth or eating their food one at a time, and you're like, yeah, she ain't the one. Like,
quick side note here. Does your wife do this with you where she'll bring up to me and she'll say, ooh, like we'll just be fucking around while we're eating dinner or something, and she'll do something. She's like, or she'll laugh really goofy or this really like shrill laugh, and she'll be like, what would you do if I did that on our first date? Would you want a second date? Like she's testing me to see if I was this obnoxious on our first date, or if I did this, or if I was picking my teeth, or I'm blowing my nose into my napkin on our first date, would you have gone for the second date? Does your wife do that, or is this
does
like
that
a my
happen
wife thing?
Regularly to you? Does that happen regularly?
Regularly enough. I'm bringing it up on the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that doesn't happen to me. I don't suffer from that affliction.
Well, you should throw that at your wife then. Ask her that. Next time you guys are eating, like talk with your mouth
I don't want to
open.
live in that world. I like the world I live in. I don't want to live in that world.
It's so
I don't
much
want to give
fun,
my wife give my wife ideas of like, hey, when you do something that sucks, why don't you stop everything and ask me if I'd put up with it for the rest of my life?
Go for it. Do it. Do it.
Grohl, going back to Grohl, said his first experience meeting the band, I remember being in the same room with them and thinking, what? That's Nirvana? Are you kidding? Because on their record cover, they looked like psycho lumberjacks. I was like, what? That little dude and that big motherfucker? You're kidding me.
I mean, going by height, man. I mean, Chris Novoselic is a big dude, man.
Dude,
so
I can't imagine I've never auditioned for another band. I've never needed to. But I can't imagine how stressful it must be to walk into the room to a pre-existing band and just go like, yeah, hey, and then start playing. And within the first minute whether they like you or not. But you have to play 3 songs. You give the person 3 songs that have got different styles to see if they can hang. And like, it's got to be fucking brutal to sit there and do it. I can't imagine that.
That's
anyway,
like, did you ever hear the story? And I'll have to fact check this about Les Claypool.
Les Claypool for acting like a fool?
No. When he
and all other
auditioned
bands with the demos that were cool.
when he auditioned for Metallica?
Wait, Les Claypool is from
Primus.
Primus. Yeah. What happened?
My name is Mud. Went on his Big Brown Beaver. They apparently told him
Yep.
you're too good. like we think you're great, but you're too good. Which kind of makes sense because when you
He
hear
would
about
outshine the band.
But yeah, and when they brought in Jason Newsted, that it got to the point where they turned down the bass on their recordings so that he wasn't featured as much. So I mean, it would kind of make sense a little bit.
But they did that to him because he was good as well, or because they just wanted to fucking crush him?
Maybe a little bit of both.
I mean, it's not really a very holistic approach to creating art, to look at someone who brings amazing talent to the situation and say, you're too good, you're out. That speaks volumes.
Well, that was kind of what they did.
Volumes.
That's the story I've heard. We're gonna have to go do some more research on this. We're gonna have to figure that out.
I mean, we've never heard a story about Metallica being assholes. It's never come up.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's true, Brandon. I don't think it could possibly be true that Lars Ulrich from Metallica said something that wasn't nice.
Jesus Christ. All right, who's up next here? Is it me? Oh, it's me.
The thing that I love is Lars could be on the podcast right now and he'd be like, yeah, fuck you too.
I'd love to hang out with
He wouldn't give a fuck. Like, I'm worried about offending Metallica.
Where I lost my place. Oh, here we go. See, another version of the story about how Grohl got with the band is that Kurt and Chris, they had seen Grohl's band. It was called Scream at the time. They saw him perform. The band disbanded. And then Grohl contacted Chris, traveled to Seattle, and then was invited to join the band. So somewhere in these two stories, I'm assuming the truth lies.
So wait, is he saying that he reached out to Nirvana instead of Nirvana reaching out to him?
And see, that's where I'm not 100% sure on this one. I haven't been able to kind of narrow down the exact time frame of how everything went down with Dave Grohl joining the band. But
right. I love it when you hear these stories about how these integral moments in rock history, they happen like they're nothing. Like I remember the way, when we get to AC/DC, the way that Brian was asked to join AC/DC, the way that he joined the band was very kind of nonchalant and committal as well. He basically just waited at a pub across the street until they were ready. And then they were like, yeah. And he was like, well, I've got to get a bus or a train home or something. And he was like, well, I'll just roll the dice, and I guess I'll just sleep on the curb if they don't want me in the band.
He wasn't getting any of those royalties from that vacuum cleaner commercial that he did back then. Did you ever heard that one?
I've heard of it, but I think it's gonna. I'm really looking forward to AC/DC because they came from Australia. I grew up in some of the places and visited some of the places that they started the band in, so I'm really looking forward to that one. But anyway, we're not getting off track. Going back to Nirvana, they started recording for the album with producer Butch Vig at his Smart Studios in Madison, Wisconsin. They recorded some of the tracks while they were there, but had to put a halt to the recording when Kurt strained his voice. Shock horror, Kurt strained his voice the way he sings. The songs they recorded were Imodium, which would become Breed, Dive, which later was the B-side to Sliver, In Bloom, Pay to Play, later named Stay Away, Sappy, Lithium, Here She Comes Now, which was released on the Velvet Underground tribute album, Heaven and Hell Volume 1, and Polly, which I love Polly. Polly, I remember hearing Polly thinking it was like, this is a joke, right? They slipped that on by accident. I remember thinking why is that song on the record? And now it's like this dark horse song on the fucking album. Polly wants a cracker.
Well, it eventually got to the point. And this is, as we're getting up to the 30th minute here, this is going to be the perfect place where we can take a break and go to the next episode. But I'll read this one here, where the band, they kind of became disenchanted with Sub Pop, where the album Bleach sold pretty well, but Sub Pop didn't promote it as much as some of their other artists and some of their other albums. And I think that kind of started to get on Kurt's nerves a little bit. So they became disenchanted with Sub Pop, so they started to look for a major label deal. Now, under the advice of Sonic Youth's Kim Gordon, they signed with DGC Records in 1990. And actually, during their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Novoselic thanked Silver during his speech for, quote, introducing them to the music industry properly. Like
Which is
that's
a
a
great
pretty
dig.
it's a pretty big thing right there to have somebody guide them that way. Did you have anybody guiding you when you were, Sick Puppies were starting, or were you just out there flailing around like a chicken with his head cut off?
No, we landed on, we only ever worked with one set of people, which has its pros and cons. Because you can say that the people that worked with us, that helped us get to where we are, were there, but at the same time, all the problems that came up were there as well.
Yeah.
So no, but I never had to deal with going back and forth between, and I think in all honesty, I think it's actually better to bounce around between some shitty situations before things happen, so you can get perspective on, hey, we won't do that again. Hey, we'll look out for this when we sell our first album. Hey, we'll make sure when we go on tour, we don't do that. We just went in a straight line the whole time. So we didn't, and I actually, when my band split, I had to learn all of that after I'd already sold a lot of records. I came out and was like, oh, and I started making these mistakes with working with different people that I shouldn't have and wasting time doing certain things, and was like, oh, I should have learned this when I was 19, but I've only ever done one fucking thing, and it was just a nice, steady, slow race. So it has its pros and cons, but we had success, but then I had more success, but less perspective. So I think it's a bit of a dig to say it for Novoselic, to say introducing them to the music industry properly, which is basically like Sub Pop sucks.
Kinda,
and
yeah.
always did. It's fucking totally says that.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Are we gonna wrap, or should I keep going?
No, let's go through. We'll get through. We have a couple more here. Like, read your.
All right,
you'll
cool.
go through your next.
You
two.
tell me.
I'll tell you.
You're a professional. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. Then they moved. Now that they were signed, they went back to work on the album. They went right back to Butch Vig, but this time they recorded at Sound City Studios in Van Nuys, which is one of the most famous recording studios in the world, which I was very lucky to be able to work in one time right before they tore it down. There's an entire Dave Grohl documentary on it. It's called Sound City, right? And when we did Polar Opposite, we recorded the video for that in Sound City, and it was fucking great to have been able to do that and have video of it and the whole thing.
Don't
yeah.
let someone
And we have another one. They're turning off. They're turning off.
That's the kids. The kids singing.
I'm
That's
sorry.
the kids singing.
Yeah, give it to the kids.
So Cobain, remember when we were doing Rockstar 101 and we had Kalen on, and you guys got super nerdy about like layering your voice and all of these other things, and
Yeah, it was a mistake.
it's coming right back here with Cobain. He was reluctant to record overdubs, but he was persuaded to double track his vocals when Vig told him that John Lennon did it.
Yeah, I've heard that story, and I think it's a really good example of a good producer doing a good job, rather than saying, because Lennon was a massive, the biggest influence on Kurt. It's infamously like he was worshipped Lennon. So you need to double track vocals on a record, especially a 3-piece record, like unless you want to just stay as a fucking garage band. Doubling vocals is a big deal. I'm not going to get into it, but it makes a huge difference. You can't work with a band as a producer and say, the vocals are going to sound average because you're going to choose to not double your vocals, which basically means you sing it one time, then you sing a second one over the top of it, and you hear both of them at the same time. It makes the vocals sound fatter and fuller, makes it sound like a record. Most producers would have beat the shit out of the guy and just been like, motherfucker, shut up, you're doubling it. And instead he just said, oh, that's a shame, because, your hero insisted on it. So the first thing Kurt's going to go, oh, hey, man, we got to double him. Got to double him.
Yeah.
It's a great mind fuck, but it basically hands. It's like what a woman does in a healthy relationship. You make the man feel like they're in charge. Exactly it. That's what a good producer does.
Yeah.
Is it me?
Yeah, this is where we'll wrap up.
Oh, yeah, it's me.
This will be the
Sorry.
final one.
All right. So the sessions, dude, could you imagine being there during the sessions? Went very well, generally, with the band working 8 to 10 hours a day on the album. Vig did say that Cobain would become difficult at times, saying he'd be great for an hour and then he'd sit in the corner and say nothing for an hour. Yeah, because he's a fucking artist. Like, doi. Like, he's an artist.
You're saying you've done that?
I've done worse than that. Just to sit in the corner and sulk for a minute. I've fucking sabotaged recordings. I've done shit that was so stupid and mean Yeah. No, I
This
know,
is
like
a-
literally, like.
No, don't
If
say
you-
it yet. Stop.
Okay. All right.
This is going to be a perfect tease moment for the next episode where Shim will spill the beans on what he has done to sabotage recording sessions. Also, coming up in the next episode, we're going to go through how Smells Like Teen Spirit got its name and also the link that has to the Beastie Boys.
Nice.
There's a link
Fucking
there.
A. All right.
And it's
So, like-
amazing. I love this part of the story. But that's going to be coming up in the next episode. And I promise you, we're going to remember to do the 3 songs for Nirvana's Nevermind.
Yeah, that's right.
Not like we forgot when it was Soundgarden. So we're going to get to that coming up into the next episode.
So, as always, in the comments section, if you have any comments, if you want to correct us on anything, or if you want to add anything to go, hey, you guys forgot about this, or did you know, please write it in the comments section. We will come back to it. And Brandon, run down the socials and sign us off.
Yeah, if you are watching this actually on Spotify or Apple or Google, there is no comment section, so you can hit us up on the socials. You can find me at The Real Brandalorian over on Instagram. I'm also on Twitch. Just at The Real Brandalorian. That's the easiest way to find me. And then you can also find Shim. He is Shim Music at Shim. If it doesn't have the blue check mark, it's not Shim. Because
It's not me. So
that
it's either
son of a
Shim
bitch-
or Shim Music.
That son of a bitch got the blue check mark. I'm still working
Uh-huh.
on mine.
It's called relevance.
And I have none.
We're getting there. Well, I want a history of rock. I want the history of rock blue check mark. That's what I want. Yeah. That's going to be a game changer. Anyway,
what's up.
we will see you next week. Thank you so much for your time and your energy, which is a very valuable thing. His name is Brandon. He is the DJ.
His name is Shim. He's the rock star. Class dismissed.